help them by bombing all of them. As though like the LGBT tolerant Israel or LGBT friendly Israel is welcoming gay Muslims from Palestine with open fucking arms, dude. Yeah, I'm so glad that the gay and trans and lesbian and bisexual and pansexual Israelis are also equally as fucking militant against Palestinians on the basis that they're fucking Palestinians. I'm so glad that that's happening. Like, what is the fucking point, dude?
That clip, the State Department spokesman, and he's petrified. He's petrified. You know, he was very confident and boldly proclaiming that the Israelis were engaged in self-defense. But then suddenly when asked about the Palestinian children who were killed, and all the reporter wanted him to do was to say he condemned that, he was like, we just have very preliminary reports on the ground. We can't comment on anything. But he could comment, you know, when it came time to herald the Israeli military forces as acting with great nobility and ethics. And you know, I find the whole thing so bizarre for so many reasons. I mean, let's remember that Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, came to the United States throughout the Obama administration and openly campaigned against the Democrats. He went to the Congress at the invitation of the Republicans to rail against the Democratic Party. And even with that, even with Netanyahu spitting in the face of the Democrats, they still handed him, Obama did on his way out, the biggest military package in American history, $37 billion, going to the Israeli military, something like $3 billion a year, even though they have much better
$3.8 billion
programs of like universal health care and free college. They don't have it absolutely, but much.
Yeah, we should stop supporting Israel because they're a communist state that has like universal health care. Seriously, what's up with that? Why are we helping out a commie state? It's got universal programs, motherfucker. What the fuck kind of shit is this? Why expect Americans to fucking ever practice empathy when our government doesn't fucking empathize towards our own people that are poor? You know what I mean? There's empathy in America if you make above a certain amount of money. You are not a human if you're poor, black, brown. Doesn't fucking matter. Even here, so
better than the United States offers its own citizens. And yet, even with that, and even with, you know, the fact that the Obama administration abstained on the question of whether the Israeli occupation is illegal, essentially endorsing the idea that it is, the Democrats sound like they're trapped in 1993 or 1994, where you can't ever utter a word that can be construed as even sympathy for dead Palestinians. It's and you know, I just one last
that's the craziest fucking thing, dude. It's like it's insane. Which is like it's just like the moment that you subscribe like or ascribe humanity to the Palestinians is the moment where people are just like, all right, motherfucker, you're like you're being anti-Semitic. It's just you're giving the game away.
Point about the bizarreness of the U.S. Politics angle of this, which is that, you know,
people mauling that Glenn had a good take. Glenn has always had a good take on this. Trans women here, you're 100% correct. You can be LGBTQ and Muslim. Most of the LGBTQ people who face violence in Muslim countries are themselves Muslim. Same with the U.S. and Christians. You don't actually care about LGBTQ people in Palestine if you support bombing everyone in Palestine. Yeah, exactly. Crazy. Okay.
Let's not let the Republican Party off the hook here either. The Trump movement claims that its overarching ideology is America first. We take care of American citizens before we take care of the rest of the world. How can you reconcile that ideology of America first with sending billions of dollars that could be helping schools and hospitals and addiction problems and communities here in the United States to Israel, and constantly demanding that our own government intervene in this conflict on the other side of the world that does nothing but jeopardize American national security? It increases anti-American sentiment. Generals have said that one of the reasons why terrorism against the United States is intensified is because of our constant involvement on the side of Israel. How do you claim that you believe in an America First ideology, but then constantly venerate the interests of Israelis above your own citizens? It makes no sense.
Yeah, and I'll never forget that Netanyahu speech. It was still one of the most outrageous things I've ever seen in American politics. Glenn, I'm curious, the Obama administration famously, I think it was on their last waning days in the UN, what did they, abstained or something from a resolution allowing the condemnation to come through? How does Biden feel about Israel? Because as I understood it, even Obama and Ben Rhodes taking that step was far out of step for many of the people in the Democratic Party at that time.
Yeah, that was a big deal, what Obama did. But, you can see, the Democrats who are issuing statements and the Republicans who are issuing statements, even though we always hear how, they can't agree on anything, they're completely interchangeable. The Democratic mayoral candidates running for mayor in a city like New York, or one of the bluest cities in the country, sound just like Tom Cotton or, any Marco Rubio or any hawkish. They sound completely indistinguishable. If I put their statements in front of you, you'd never be able to tell. And Jeremy Scahill just did a series on Biden's history at The Intercept. And one of the things he points out is that Biden has long been far to the right of even the right-wing elements of the Democratic.
He literally said, if Israel didn't exist, we should be unapologetic for our unconditional aid to Israel. And if Israel didn't exist, we would have created another Israel to help our defense interests in the Middle East. And that's not like that in and of itself is something that if someone who's pro-Palestine would say, you would literally be like, oh, that's anti-Semitic. Like if Ilhan Omar or anyone who is also from a Muslim background too, if they were to say something along the lines of Israel is a state that contributes to the Western, Israel as a state is literally a fucking military fucking base, a gigantic military base in the middle of the East, in the middle of Middle East for American interests, you would literally be like, that's so anti-Semitic. I can't believe that. That's so fucked up. We are supposed to act like there are a different interests there at play. Israel's the ideal proxy to fuck up shit in the Middle East, 100%. But a kid just lost his father at a young age and has seen more blood and violence than we could ever imagine. And then they wonder why groups like Hamas exist. The IDF in Israel has created more terror than Hamas ever will. But that's not considered a terror act, of course, because the definition changed. There's no Muslim group to blame.
Why does the United States?
We'll talk about Noam Chomsky.
Party on numerous issues, crime famously one of them, but another one is Israel, where even Israeli labor leaders trying to forge a peace deal with the Palestinians saw Biden as this kind of obstacle because of how extremist and fanatical he was when it came to automatically siding with the interest of Israel.
Do you see any movement, though, in terms of, you do see some progressives putting out statements just in support of Palestinian human rights? It does seem like there's at least more of a space on the left to talk about these issues in a nuanced way that actually respects human rights and upholds some of the values that America claims to support, like democracy. Do you see that as sort of progress within the Democratic Party?
For sure. I think it's a huge deal, something that actually doesn't get the attention it merits, that we now have two members of Congress, both Muslim women, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, who actually support a boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against the Israeli government in order to stop the occupation, and who don't mince words at all when it comes not only to condemning Israeli aggression, but also the Biden administration for standing by and supporting it. And that definitely has created this space. You also have Congresswoman Marie Newman and a couple of others who have been really courageous. There's a bill pending now to condition Israeli aid on their cessation of human rights abuses towards the Palestinians, something that James Baker was the last person to try and do under Bush 41, and he got obliterated because of it and never happened again. So I think that bill has 18 co-sponsors, which isn't nothing, but at the same time, it's a tiny fraction of the House. And so, yes, it's an improvement, but given how grim the discourse has been for decades, this improvement is minuscule, but it's better than nothing. So, I mean, I'm glad that they're there doing that. I think it's helpful. I think it gives left-wing activists kind of space in which to think differently about this issue, and that's important, but we're still so far away from doing anything to subvert the bipartisan consensus, this lockstep bipartisan consensus in defense of anything that Israel does.
Yeah. Well, thanks for breaking it down for us, Glenn.
Well
Really.
Okay, we're going to talk about Noam Chomsky and why the United States supports Israel. This is from 2016, but yeah, if Israel didn't exist, we'd create an Israel just to defend her interests, is what Joe Biden said. I need to run another ad break because this is the top of the hour. I learned more in here about the conflict than watching the media for a decade. The media either, again, purposely ignores these atrocities, or when they do talk about it, they talk about it in incredibly biased fucking terms. Incredibly biased terms that it's just like fucking police brutality, guys, okay? It's very similar to police brutality and the way that, like, black people have historically been treated in the media and still do to this day, where, like, the media, as it plays its primary role of manufacturing consent, and in an effort to do so, they play their primary role, their primary responsibility of normalizing the untold brutality that you see right before your eyes and make it as justifiable as possible. Now, before I move on to the Noam Chomsky video, like I said, I'm going to run a 60-second ad break here. If you'd like to no longer see the ads, you know what the deal is. You can subscribe. You can do it for $5, or you can do it for free by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account and using your free Twitch Prime subscription. What did Ben Shapiro say about that? Fuck Ben Shapiro. Anyway, here's the ad break. Now I'm going to start the video now as well.
Toward Israel. Well, there's a history, and a very interesting one. It actually goes back a long time. One thing to remember is that Christian Zionism is a very powerful force.
Oh, absolutely, my friend. Abso-fucking-lutely. Oh, yeah.
Force, which goes back long before Jewish Zionism. In England, particularly, Christian Zionism was a powerful force among British elites. It's part of the motivation for the Balfour Declaration and for Britain's support for Jewish colonization of Israel. Remember, the Bible said, and that's a big part of British elite culture. Same in the United States. Woodrow Wilson was a devout Christian who read the Bible every day. So did Harry Truman. In the Roosevelt administration, one of the leading officials, Harold Ickes, once described the return of the Jews to Palestine as the greatest event in history. It's realizing the lesson of the Bible. These are deeply religious countries in which the biblical commands, so-called, are taken quite literally. Also, this is just part of colonization. This is the last phase of European colonization. And notice that the countries that are most...
I can't believe how problematic Noam Chomsky is being by comparing the colonization and ethnic cleansing that Israel engages in to the same thing that, like, Western nations did. Wow, that's so fucked up, dude. Oh, God, I really hate this. I really hate this. Oh, sweaty. That is such a problematic take. Which, by the way, again, I just want to remind you guys, like, it straight up is. So anyone who tries to fucking check you, or anyone who tries to fucking tell you, like, you're being problematic and tries to use, like, the marginalization card is being a fucking asshole.
Strongly in support of Israel are not just the United States. It's the United States, Australia, and Canada, the offshoots of England, Anglosphere sometimes called, unusual forms of imperialism. These are settler colonial societies, societies in which not like India, not like the British in India, say, societies, South Africa was a little like this, or Algeria under the French, settler colonial societies in which the settlers came in, essentially eliminated the native population, also driven by religious principles, very religious groups driven by Christian Zionism. Those are major cultural factors. There are also significant geostrategic factors. You go back to 1948, there was actually a split between the State Department and the Pentagon in the United States over how to react to the new state of Israel. The State Department was not committed strongly to Israeli conquests, the establishment of the state, and was concerned about the refugees. It wanted an implementation of the refugee problem. The Pentagon, on the other hand, was very impressed with Israel's military potential. The Israeli military successes, if you look back at the internal record and declassified, the Joint Chiefs of Staff described Israel as the second largest military force in the region after Turkey and a potential base for U.S. power in the region. That continued. Can't run through the whole record, but in 1958, when there was a serious crisis in the region, Israel was the only state that strongly cooperated with Britain and the United States, and it won plenty of support from the governments and the military for that reason. 1967 is when the current relations with Israel were pretty much established. Israel performed a major service to the United States by destroying a secular Arab nationalism, a major enemy of the United States, and supporting radical Islam, which the U.S. supported. And it continues right until the present.
The inception of Hamas, or the backing of Hamas, which was a more fundamentalist Islamist liberation group in comparison to other left-leaning, as a counterweight to other left-leaning and leftist and communist liberation groups, is and the Israeli support for that from the Israeli military or generals is nearly identical to what Western nations have done in the past for Wahhabist extremism, the legitimization of Wahhabist extremists and fundamentalists of that sort. And America has not learned its lessons from that ever. It's too simplistic. Motherfucker, how else are you going to describe this, dude? Like, and also, let me give you a more complicated fucking answer. It's because they were terrified of communism. Is your more complicated and more nuanced approach to funding more militant, more fundamentalist groups as a counterweight to other leftist and Marxist liberation fronts a consequence of how scary communism is? Is that the nuance that you're going to apply to this conversation? Unless he means, like, why people who like a civil and calm talk with you about the situation from both sides are getting insta-banned. If you're getting instantly clapped in this conversation, it's probably because you're like, yeah, well, have you considered that, like, the Palestinian babies deserve to be fucking obliterated? Like,
now, we saw an example of that just during the latest Gaza attack. You recall that at one point, Israel began to run out of munitions during the assault, despite the fact that it's armed to the teeth. The United States provided Israel with additional munitions through the Pentagon. And notice where they were taken from. These were U.S. munitions pre-positioned in Israel for eventual use by U.S. forces. One of many signs of how Israel is regarded as essentially a military offshoot of the United States. Very close intelligence relations that go way back, many other connections. And the media tend to take up, to support the policy of the government with very few, kind of little questioning around the edges, but basically accept the policy. So, for example, take another issue. Take the U.S. invasion of Iraq. You cannot find the phrase U.S. invasion of Iraq in the U.S. media, though it was obviously an invasion. a blatant act of aggression, a textbook case of what that's Nuremberg trials called the supreme international crime, cannot be mentioned. President Obama is praised as an opponent of the invasion. And what did he say? He said it's a mistake. It's a strategic blunder. We're not going to get away with it. Now, that's the kind of opposition that you heard from the German general staff during Hitler's invasion of Russia. It's a blunder. Shouldn't do it. Should knock off England first. That's regarded as opposition. Same in Vietnam. There's now a commemoration underway, big commemoration of U.S. sacrifices in Vietnam. Try to find the phrase U.S. invasion of South Vietnam there or anywhere in the past years.
Anthropologist Journeys, thank you for the 73 tier 1 gift subs. What the fuck?
Since 1961 when it took place. Non-existent, maybe on Democracy Now, what I write, but way out at the fringe. And this is not unique to the United States. Take, say, Britain. Right now there's interesting debates in the British literary journals, like the Times Literary Supplement, as to whether Britain should finally begin to recognize the genocidal, the word that's used, genocidal character of British colonization hundreds of years ago. Should Britain begin to face it? You can ask that question in many places. The tendency of the intellectual community to go along like a herd in support of state power, private power, is just overwhelming. Intellectuals like to think of themselves as dissident, critical, courageous, standing up against power. Absolutely untrue. You look at the historical record, that's a small fringe, and they're usually punished. The mainstream tends to be what was once called a herd of independent minds, marching in support of state power. Nothing new here. Unfortunate, you have to fight against it, not new.
This is the anarchist you make fun of every now and then. I don't make fun of Noam Chomsky. I love Noam Chomsky. Shut the fuck up. Anyway. Just curious, what are your thoughts on a one-state solution? It's the only way to go forward. Look at what is happening. Like, the two-state solution is literally, absolutely, without a fucking doubt, a method that a method of like justifying the occupation. There is no fucking two-state solution. Solution is a multi-ethnic, multi-background, one-state solution where everyone has equal rights and equal representation. There's just no other fucking way. I don't think that will happen, but credit Andy watching the video. No, we're not going to watch that. Anyway. Nime Saba, thank you for the 48 gifted subs. So do you, Ian, there's only one side that is doing bad? You don't think that maybe both sides have stuff to do to repair this society? Well, I'll be honest, I do not agree with many of your arguments and a lot of your logic on things, but I appreciate your takes and would die for your right to argue them. Okay, thanks, man. The only alternative to a one-state solution is mutual destruction? No, it's not mutual destruction. The only alternative to a one-state solution is claiming that you want to do a two-state solution while still just ethnically, slowly but surely, ethnically cleansing every single Palestinian and moving on to all of the Palestinian territory, slowly but surely withering it away and making it a one-state Israeli society for, just the people that Israel has chosen are appropriate to live on that land. That is literally what's happening currently, and it's going to continue happening. Anyway. Ignorant media suggests both sides to blame for the recent violence in Jerusalem. I don't want to watch fucking Ben Shapiro, dude. It's going to make me lose my fucking mind. Okay. Palestinians fight evictions from their home state in Jerusalem.
Gaza with airstrikes through the night as tensions reached a high not seen in years. The Israel...
Like, think about how much, both sides are in the wrong here arguments trigger me. Then what will it do to my brain? I will literally die of an aneurysm, and that is a TOS violation. If I watch Ben Shapiro straight up be like, no, actually, hypothetically, it's not a both sides situation. It's actually a one-sided situation, and that side is Israel is in the right and Palestinians are in the wrong. Like, it's like listening to a pre-abolition era, a pre-Civil War era, conservative talking about how no, the people that are fucking rising up against slavery, like the black people that want to no longer be enslaved, are in the fucking wrong, and the slavers are in the right. Like, that's literally what watching Ben Shapiro feels like, and I don't want to fucking put myself through that. It's gonna make me lose my fucking mind. I have never seen condemn Turkey the same way and they kill Kurds, as the situation is pretty similar to Israel and Palestine. It's really interesting that you say that, because I've made that comparison before as well. Odd.
Our defense forces say hundreds of rockets have been fired toward Israel, and Israel responded with airstrikes. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the rocket attacks crossed a line, and the U.S. is calling for a de-escalation from all sides. Well, one of the reasons for the tensions, a battle over evictions in Jerusalem's Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. The area has seen intense clashes between Jews and Muslims, with each side saying the land is theirs. CNN's Andrew Carey takes a closer look.
A divided street in a fractured city. Palestinians breaking the fast, a ritual during the holy month of Ramadan. On the pavement opposite, about a dozen mostly young Jewish nationalists.
Yeah, just casually fucking rolling up with an AR-15, bro.
A blast of pepper spray and a volley of plastic chairs. Scenes like this have become a familiar sight in the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah in East Jerusalem. Extreme right-wing Jewish lawmaker Itamar Ben-Gvir makes an appearance this evening alongside Deputy Mayor Aryeh King. After taunts of Nazi, Ben-Gvir says, the Deputy Mayor makes a joke about a bullet entering a man's head. Later, after a car is torched nearby,
come on, bro, normal mayor shit, dude.
Emerge of religious Israelis with pistols poised, apparently taking their positions to defend a building. This does not look or feel like a city at peace with itself. Back on the street, bottles, rocks and other objects are thrown by protesters. Police use stun grenades and make arrests for public disorder offences. Palestinian residents say the real aim is intimidation.
Remember, make no mistake here, okay? The other side, the Palestinian side of this conflict, they don't have a police force. The occupying force is policing the Palestinians as though they are enemy combatants, okay? Can you imagine? Oh, dude, the Palestinians. The Palestinians with rocks get arrested as the Jewish settlers in the region run around and dance around with their AR-15s is fucking insane, dude. Like, literally, dude. Oh my God. Okay, I can't.
Another common sight, skunk water.
Oh, this is skunk water. This is what I talked about, by the way. This is when they pump the streets and the people with skunk water, a water that is like fucking incredibly, it just smells horrible on purpose.
Out in the truck, sprayed to disperse, police say. Residents who have to live with the putrid smell in their homes and their gardens say it demeans and humiliates. It's these homes and gardens, this land, that all this is ultimately about. 7 extended Palestinian families who've lived here since the 1950s face possible eviction over the summer. Israel's Supreme Court is to hear their appeal soon. 77-year-old Nabil El-Kurd is head of one of the 7 families.
We are in the right. We are the owners of the land. We are still resisting. We are staying here, even if they don't want us.
Nabil was a little boy when he moved here after his family were expelled from their home in Haifa by Jewish forces in 1948. Under an arrangement between the UN and Jordan, which at the time controlled East Jerusalem, 28 Palestinian families were found a place to live here in exchange for giving up their refugee status. But using a law passed in 1970, after Israel took control of the whole of Jerusalem, an organization called Nachalot Shimon International is seeking their eviction, arguing that the land had once belonged to Jewish families. 3 evictions have already taken place, including the front half of Nabil's house 12 years ago.
They took all my furniture out and put it in the garden. I had a little cupboard, which I used for food and drink that I would give to visitors. They stole it.
Nabil's daughter Muna was filmed in an exchange with the man who currently lives there.
Jacob, you know this is not your house.
Yes, but if I go, you don't go back. So what's the problem? Why are you yelling at me? I didn't do this. I didn't do this.
But
It's easy to yell at me, but I didn't do this.
you are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
No one.
Come on, bro. Just like, come on, dude. It's just like, come on. I just came down here. Look, I had a wonderful life in fucking Brooklyn, okay? And now I'm here and I took your house. It's free real estate, literally. And if I don't steal your free real estate, then someone else is going to fucking steal your free real estate. Again.
Is allowed to steal it, ya ammi.
We don't understand why Arabs are here. I don't want any problems, but this area called Nachlat Shimon was for the Jews even before the establishment of the state. This land is Jewish and belongs to us. We don't believe anyone, not the courts or anyone else.
Israel's foreign ministry characterizes what's going on here as a real estate dispute.
Bro, it's just a real estate dispute, bro. Come on, bro. Hey, how about the entirety of Israel is a real estate dispute then? How about that? Like, the key thing here is if you fucking recognize that this is more than just a real estate dispute, then you also call into question the existence of Israel as a nation state. Because the same argument launched towards the Palestinians that are living inside these homes are literally the exact same arguments that Israel utilizes and weaponizes in many instances to justify their occupation. That's how it is. Don't say it's not, oh, you were just being sarcastic. So, like, and where's that fucking video from? Why ban everyone that doesn't agree with you? You fucking idiot. The last guy I banned literally said Hitler was right. Why wouldn't I ban that person? The last guy I banned literally said fat Jew and Hitler was right. That's not just a minor disagreement. I'm going to fucking ban you just for fucking trying to defend that other dipshit, dude. I can't believe I won't defend the guy that said Hitler was right, man. I am such an asshole, dude. Really. My bad, dude. I should have been having a robust and wonderful debate with some fucking Nazi asshole. Yeah, who wanted to both sides Hitler, dude. Nice. What was I fucking saying before I got interrupted with the brain dead take? Does anyone have? Oh yeah, does anyone have that video? I want to show you the video of the settlers. Yeah, dude, you are really unwelcome to the Adolf Hitler stan accounts. Yeah. These Israelis, the Israelis who are aggressively taking land are a religious minority. They're like not even 15% of the religious population. Watch Rudy Rockman on YouTube for an actual Israeli moderate take. Okay. Then why the fuck is the IDF defending them? Why the fuck is the Israeli state? Why did the Israeli state, and please explain this to me. This is one thing I do not understand. Why is it that the original Israeli state position on settler terrorism, settler expansion in the West Bank was to originally never really fully condemn it, but to turn the other cheek and look away. And now it's just straight up, we are going to be bulldozing ourselves, motherfucker. And also, if you have a problem with it, we will literally fucking murder you. How did that happen? How did that happen? I wonder. Why did it change? That's crazy, man. That's fucking crazy, dude. Oh, it's just a small minority. Okay. If it's just a small minority, then why doesn't the Israeli state, which is incredibly fucking powerful, do something about it? Well, they are doing something about it. I mean, like, why don't they do the opposite of what they've been doing, which is defend the settler terrorists and also advocate for them and also push these court cases to, you know, the Israeli courts, which never rule in their favor for some reason. It's crazy. No, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the fucking the video. The video of the video that we watched the other day of like the settlers are straight up being like, yeah, we're gonna take it. Like we're just gonna take this. Not the if I don't steal it, someone else will. But there was another one, not Yakub. No, there was another video that we watched about from like 2009. It's from a documentary. It's like a short video from a documentary about settler expansion. Isn't it somewhat hypocritical to criticize the murder and genocide of women and children? What? Isn't it hypocritical to criticize Israel when we're doing the same thing in the U.S.? If Native Americans were fighting back against us, I'd have to be on our side despite moral concerns because of best self-interest? What the fuck? Dude. You're making the Pilgrim take. Like, your argument here is, like, the genocide already happened in America, okay? The genocide of indigenous populations already happened. What you're basically saying is like, well, if I was here, I would be doing the genocide. Like, at the time when the colonies were forming, well, I would have been on the side of the genociders. Like I'm just letting you know you don't have to do that. Like, you didn't have to be... No, it's not that video. Fuck, it was like a tweet. Oh, this was it. Yeah. This was the one. Yes. This.
After house.
Here, this is the video I wanted to show you, okay?
We take house after house. All this area will be a Jewish neighborhood. We are not finished the job. We are going to the next neighborhood, and after that we will go more. Our dream that all East Jerusalem will be like West Jerusalem.
My man said, the least nationalist man in Israel. This is the least nationalist man in Israel, boys.
Our dream that all East Jerusalem will be like West Jerusalem, Jewish capital of Israel. ואני רואה בזה המשך של המפעל היהודי-ציוני. המשך שיבת ציון. זה הכל.
This entire 40-second video is just a fucking self-report, dude. It's just a mask off 100% self-report, and it's not from yesterday. It's from 2009 because that mentality did not change.
זה בא על חשבון הערבים? כן, גם בג"ץ והכנסת.
This is the best part, though. This is the best part of the argument, which is like, yeah, I see this as a continuation of the Zionist project. Like, this guy is not like anti-Israel, by the way. He's not making a criticism of like Israeli actions. He's saying like, yeah, no, this is good. We're doing this and it's good.
יהודי ציוני. המשך שיבת ציון. זה הכל. זה בא על חשבון הערבים? כן, גם בג"ץ והכנסת.
But our government institutions were also built at the expense of Arabs who lived there. Yeah. When you say that, you're fucking anti-Semitic. He's saying that as a positive. Also, just another reminder to all the quote-unquote progressives. I just need to remind every quote-unquote progressive in here who feels some type of way that, like, when you agree with these sorts of actions, you are agreeing with literally every single American white evangelical Protestant Christian psychopath. Okay? When you fucking agree with these sorts of actions, you are agreeing with some of the most horrifying monsters in the United States of America and in our political process. They love this shit. Okay? They fucking love this shit. They're like, fuck yeah, this is what we want. Abso-fucking-lutely. You agree with Donald Trump. You agree with some of the worst, sickest freaks in American politics. I mean, the difference is that Israel is actively fucking over Palestinians right now, but the chatter does make a point. Is it right to give back LA, for example, back to Mexico, or Atlanta back to Cherokee, or upstate New York to the Iroquois, even though we got those lands through unjustifiable means? No. What you are supposed to do, what we have failed to do, is, well, one, never do the genocide in the first place. So if the genocide is actively occurring, you try to stop it, which is what's going on in Israel right now. But what you're supposed to do in that situation is by offering certain parts of territory and also giving full equal access to resources and fucking pay reparations for the damage that has already been done. That was 400 fucking years ago. But even then, there are certain actions that you can take for Native Americans in the United States of America. But once again, this is genocide actively happening right now versus genocide that occurred 400 years ago. Do you understand the difference there? You are literally describing a two-state solution? No. Having autonomous regions or giving land, like repatriation or expropriation of land, and giving land back to Native Americans or indigenous peoples, certain parts of land, is entirely set, while giving them equal representation and reparations is a one-state solution. It's not a two-state solution. It's a one-state solution. Two does not equal one. It bugs me when people act like the states we took from Mexico are equivalent to what we took from indigenous people. Mexico's a settler colony too. Yeah, like I mean, there's difference there as well, but aren't we still trying to run oil through Native American land? We already do that, yes, and we beat the fuck out of them when they push back. Like how the North Dakota Access Pipeline originally was slated to go through an American territory, and not through indigenous land, not through tribal territories. And they were like, well, this will potentially ruin the water supply, and also, and even during the Obama presidency, this was absolutely under Obama. And they were like, oh, well, we can't be murdering or ruining the water supply of this populated area, so we're just going to run it through Native American territory. And when people fucking criticized that and fought back against it, we used guns and attack dogs. Amy Goodman of Democracy Now! Literally was attacked by an attack dog when she went to the North Dakota Access Pipeline protests. Anyway. You realize Israel is afraid of removing all settlers because it will create a civil war? What? Anyway,
But Palestinian families say there is a huge injustice at the center of it all, which is that under an Israeli law passed in 1950, they have no right to return to their old homes in Israel that were taken away and given to Jewish families. Deputy Jerusalem Mayor Flo Hassan Nahum refused to...
The funniest argument here... Dude, what the fuck? Why are they... Did this end up on 4chan or something? Why are there so many fucking Nazis who keep coming in here? It's insane. Your old take is popular again? God damn. I haven't had this many Nazis in here in like a long ass time. The irony here of like having some sort of stake or having some sort of ownership over land. Let's say that these were homes that like well, I mean, these weren't homes. This was like land. It wasn't like, it's not like a Palestinian person. It's not like a Jewish person was evicted from a house and then a Palestinian person was given that fucking house, right? But this was, let's say it was land, right? That a Jewish person had ownership over or stake over, and Palestinian people were given that land for 50 years, for the past 50 fucking years, right? And they've been living there. Don't you personally fucking understand how horrible it is to remove someone from their home that they've been living in for 50 fucking years? You used to have a bunch of Nazis when you were a 5K Andy, and we would like...
address the different restitution laws when interviewed by CNN, but said the municipality was committed to helping all people in the city.
In local government, we cannot be involved in those matters. It is not us who make any type of laws like this. This is a property dispute that will be solved in the courts.
But which courts? Israel wants this settled at its own high court under its own laws. International law considers East Jerusalem occupied territory, which Israel strongly rejects.
And the people living here are protected, have protected status under international law. And accordingly, Israel is obligated under international law not to transfer the protected population in or out or within occupied territory, nor is it allowed to transfer its own population into that territory.
For all the legal complexities, the provocations and the violence, it's hard to avoid the conclusion that something pretty basic seems broken in Sheikh Jarrah. Something isn't working. Andrew Carey, CNN, Jerusalem.
Mohammed.
When you think
Britain's role in the occupation of Palestine, I don't know if there's like old fucking photos on here. Hold on, I gotta scroll through this real quick.
illegal immigration.
I don't know. Sometimes they will like, sometimes there's like old footage that shows like fucking gore or whatever. Okay.
When you think Palestine, you may think violence, land sieges, and a decades-long Israeli occupation. But what you might not know is that another country played a driving role in causing the region's conflict: Imperial Britain.
When the white man arrived.
From 1516 to at least 1917, Palestine was under the control of the Ottoman Empire.
True.
A religiously diverse land where Christians, Muslims, and Jews lived alongside one another at peace for the most part. Then in the early 1900s, a small number of European Jews were trying to drum up support for Zionism and the establishment of a Jewish homeland.
Theodor Herzl.
Just 20 years before, in 1897, the movement led by Theodor Herzl was initiated at a conference in Switzerland. They decided that they would advocate for a Jewish homeland in Palestine, but the movement at the time didn't have much support. And at the time, only around 8% of the population of Palestine was Jewish. At the same time, Arab nationalism was on the rise and many Palestinians wanted an independent state. Imperial Britain knew of both the ambitions of Zionists and Palestinians and used the situation to bolster their own interests. In 1914, amid World War I, Britain went to war.
Even before this, Herzl had, like, before this, they had contact with, like, Herzl had contact with, was it Abdul Hamid? Like, that went to Sultan Abdul Hamid II to ask for the Palestinian territory to be given to Jews as like a homeland. And they were, and that was of course refused at the time.
War with the Ottoman Empire. And in 1915, Henry McMahon, Britain's representative in Cairo, approached Arab leaders with a proposal. Britain would agree to Arab independence if they helped fight against the Ottomans.
Yep, that's true.
Then in 1917, Britain's Foreign Secretary wrote a one-paragraph letter to Walter Rothschild, a leading figure in the British Jewish community. It read, "His Majesty's government views with favour the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object." The letter became known as the Balfour Declaration, and it was in stark contrast to a declaration of the British and French armies in 1918, which assured the people of Syria, Palestine, and Mesopotamia of autonomy. So what was going on? Britain had promised independence to the Arabs that lived in Palestine, but then also promised a homeland for Jews on land that was already inhabited. Was Britain just transferring land that did not belong to them to whoever they liked? When the Ottoman Empire collapsed in 1918, the League of Nations gave Britain a mandate to administrative control of Palestine in 1920. It was a dual mandate. On one hand, they were to act on behalf of Palestinians, but on the other hand, they were to act on behalf of the international community of Jews who wanted to establish a homeland. Britain then drew up arbitrary borders, transferring the eastern bank of the Jordan River to the Hashemites. It was under the British mandate that Jews from Europe began to immigrate to Palestine and buy up land. The Jewish population in Palestine grew tenfold from 60,000 to more than 600,000 between 1918 and 1947. Many Palestinians saw the mass influx of Jews as a European colonial movement. So, as one might expect, it led to conflict. In 1929, riots broke out at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. Both Palestinians and Jews lost lives. In 1936, after Jewish immigration increased even more riots broke out. This time, the British were heavy-handed and killed between 2,000 and 5,000 Palestinians. A Royal British Commission concluded that because Britain had allowed mass immigration, Palestine had two distinct societies that couldn't be reconciled. They recommended a partition of the land. The Arab Higher Committee rejected this, saying it was all their land.
By the way, Turks can get some too, but like the Turkish foreign policy in the northern Syrian corridor is literally directly ripped from what the British are doing of removing Kurdish people from villages and putting the Syrian refugees that are currently in Turkey into the northern Syrian corridor that will be, or at least that was the original goal, to secure the southern region and the southern border of Turkey, to secure it by repopulating certain areas. Ethnic conflict in the Middle East has always operated on this. Ethnic conflict in the Middle East always revolves around displacement, and putting a different group of people and with leaders that are either Turkish or pro-Turkish or pro whichever government is fucking doing the displacement, like changing the ethnic dynamic of that area in the exact same way that the British Empire did in Palestine.
Britain then banned the Arab Higher Commission. They introduced the White Paper of 1939. It stated that Palestine should be a binational state inhabited by Jews and Palestinians, but that Jewish immigration would be limited for 5 years. But
Young Fossil, $5. Why don't you like Yang? This is my second time donating. I don't know why the first one didn't read. I donated $3. Young Fossil, I don't like Andrew Yang because of what the fuck he said about the ongoing fucking conflict. Immediately after Israel bombed the shit out of Gaza and killed 9 fucking children and 20 people in total, he literally turned around and was like, Israel has a right to exist. Fuck you. Fuck off, Hamas. You guys are in the wrong for getting bombed. Okay? That's why. Fuck Yang once again.
illegal immigration still went on, and violence continued to erupt. And when Britain couldn't handle the mess they had a part in creating, they handed the country back to the UN in 1948. The UN then decided to partition Palestine. The story gets a lot more complicated after this. But the British promising land which already belonged to Palestinians to other people has played a part in decades of conflict and bloodshed.
Yeah, the FDA authorized the COVID vaccine for kids ages 12 to 15 as well. Tommy Lauren, Hollywood's using woke culture as an excuse to cancel what? What do you think your take would be if you were Jewish? I don't know. I'm fucking Turkish, and I just literally criticized Turkish foreign policy that is quite similar to what they were describing here. So what the fuck do you think my opinion would be, dumbass? I'm literally fucking Turkish, and I just criticized Turkish foreign policy and its similarities to what's going on here. So I don't know. God damn, bro. And there's plenty of fucking Jews in here that have the same approach to this situation. Just because you're Jewish doesn't mean that you're like blind. You have to demonstrate sheer blind loyalty to fucking Israel, no matter how inhumane or how cruel or how awful they are being. Would you call this an apartheid situation? I saw that David Pacman said no and really wanted to interview with Yang following his tweet. Disappointing. Love your content. No, this is an apartheid situation with the ultimate goal being the genocide of Palestinians. I'm sorry. Like, look, I like David Pacman, but this is an issue that we've never agreed on. And I don't agree with him on like any sort of defense of what Israel is doing. I'm sorry. I just don't. When the fucking Human Rights Watch is against it, like, you got to notice that it's gone beyond a reasonable amount of genocide that, like, Western nations can overlook. When it gets to a point where you got homies doing this because they think the Oxamos is burning, when it's not, it's just another tree, or I think it's like a tree in the region. Hamas is also bombing Israel as we speak. Why don't you show that? I already did, you dumb motherfucker. I literally did. And not only did I show that, but I also showed the Iron Dome defense system. And I also said that the disproportionate use of force will always make Israel the villain in this story, no matter what. Hamas can't do shit. They're a fucking disorganized, fundamentalist movement comprised of individuals that Israel is literally fucking doing recruitment for, okay? Straight up. Every time you fucking eviscerate a baby in their crib inside of a fucking apartment, there you go. You're delivering a gift to Hamas. If you want to obliterate Hamas, then stop fucking bombing Gaza. Stop operating the world's largest open-air prison, okay? They're used rockets hundreds of times. They aren't a real threat. Motherfucker, if you don't know what the Iron Dome is, then shut the fuck up. Like,